Hello again, it's Nick from No Magnolia, and back with part 2 of this exciting thing about spreading logos out on a screen. So you recall last time we got as far as spreading them out in terms of position. We didn't do anything with the scale, so at the moment you can just scale all these logos and they quite niftily kind of adjust their positions and stuff. But what we wanted to address as well was the scaling of each one, because these good people want their logos to look the same size, and so you could do just doing it by eye, but then there's always a bit of subjectivity about what looks bigger than what, and everyone sort of goes, oh, I'm not sure my logo looks as big as the other ones. So it's good to be able to have something to point to that goes, well, actually it is exactly the same size, and here's the maths to prove it. So what we did was come up with two alternative ways of sizing logos. The first method was using a bounding box. So here we've got a null layer here, and we set it up so that the logo would either scale to the width or the height, but would never go outside the bounding box of that layer. And the second method was to use an overall area. And actually this is the method we kind of prefer, because it's absolutely unarguable, really. And the thing with the bounding box is, for example, this logo is really, really tall. So if you have the bounding box set to, say, that shape, this logo would be slightly larger than that. But this logo would be too big. So you'd have to then scale this one down, and then it looks a bit small compared to that one. So we wanted to kind of avoid that, really. So the area is absolutely, I think, the best way of doing it, or seems the fairest way anyway. But we also put in a checkbox here, so we can kind of flick between the two easily. So if the client changes their mind and says, actually, we want it scaled to the bounding box or whatever, then we can do that easily. So how do we do that? I will show you. I'm assuming that we've got everything that we did last time. So you've got your start and your end layer, and you've got your positions and stuff. And we're going to leave the Barclaycard logo as is, because it needed to be larger anyway, and so we're going to just size that by eye. There's only one of it, so that's fine. We're going to start with the next one down. So Shift S. So first thing we're going to need is a definition of the move layer, which is yeah. Then we need the scale of that. Sorry, both dimensions. Let's expand this a little bit. We need to know the actual width in pixels of this layer. Width times scale 0 divided by 100, and height times scale 1 over 100, and that will give us the width in pixels and the height in pixels. Then we go if whoops. What I've done here is I'm testing to see if this use area scale thing is actually ticked. If it is, we are going to use the area slider, and if it isn't, then we will use the bounding box. If it's ticked, then we'll calculate the area. Now I have to leap into Photoshop at this point, and I'll show you a diagram. Let's say this is the area of the layer at whatever scale it is, which width and height in pixels, so that's, at least we know those. And then this is the area that we want. We've defined this big area here as, say, 10,000 or 20,000 whatever pixels, which would maybe be 200 by 100 pixels in dimension. And that's given by the width and the height multiplied by some number equally. So we're going to scale it up equally so it's the same proportion. So it's like, let's say, G times H times G times W. So that's WHG squared. So you shuffle that around, and then you get G being the square root of the area over the width times the height. So that's what we're going to use. So we can define A, which is the target area, and oops, so that's the target area that we're going to use from this slider up here, which is at the moment 10,000 pixels, but it can be anything you want. And the S, which is the scale, is actually let's just do let's squirt A over width times height, and that's going to be a number between 0 and 1 or around there somewhere, and then we're going to just do 100 times that, so then we can use it in the scale thing, which needs to be between 0 and 100. That's all we need to do for that. And then for the other method, this is a little bit more complicated. So what we're going to do is use ratios here. So we're going to have the first ratio being the width over the height of this layer. And the second ratio, we're going to have R2 here being that. So SC is the scale of this, which is currently 288.5 by 172.9, and we're going to define, we're going to find out which ratio is bigger. So hop back into Photoshop again temporarily. Right, so here we are in Photoshop. This is another little diagram. Let's say that this is the logo that you've got. It's quite wide, and so the ratio of width to height is about 3:1. And this is the bounding box you want to fit it into, and let's say the ratio is like 3:2 or something like that. If we fit that in here, you can see you're going to have to fit it to the width. If this one had a bounding box like that, like the E logo that we had, you'd have to fit it to the height. So if you divide the ratio of this by the ratio of that, you can see the ratio of this would be 3, and the ratio of that would be 1.5, 3/2. So if the ratio of this divided by that is greater than 1, so 3 over 1.5 is 2, yeah, 2, then you fit to the width, and if it's not, then you fit to the height. Good, good. Took me a while to work that one out, I think. So anyway, press on. So we're going to test the ratio. So if R1 over R2 is greater than 1, then it's proportionally wider than the target layer. So we're going to fit to the target layer's width. So this variable S equals scale 0 over width times 100. And if not, then we're fitting to the height. So the scale is scale 1 over height times 100. And all we've done there in those two lines there is that, missed a bracket, that's not going to work. We've worked out how much we have to scale the width up to make it as wide as the target layer here, and conversely how much we've got to scale the height up to make it as high as the target layer. We'll get there. And then after we've done all that, all we have to do is do that, and then we put in something else which is a bonus. Let's actually not do that. So there's something the matter. Oh, I missed a capital C for checkbox. Right. So that will now scale to we're using the area scale, so that scales up and that is now an area of 39,500 pixels. Or, I mean, the area is an arbitrary thing. Basically, you can kind of scrub that around until it's about the size that you want. If we're not using the area scale, and let's move this over it to just demonstrate this. Plonk. It will scale to the width in this case. So, as before, let's copy this scale attribute to the other ones, and we can then go and just see that all of these are now currently scaling to the bounding box. So that one is scaling to the width, that one is scaling to the height, that one's width, and so on. And then if we use the area, there we go. Now these are actually disappearing off the screen because the area is too big. So if we bring this down so that they don't, we can also obviously vary the X gap to bring them a little bit in. If we're now using safe frames, we could scale that down a little bit more and say something like that. So this other little bonus thing we had on every layer, we wanted to be able to scale them. Now we've got our expressions. They're obviously not going to scale because scale is not going to be taken into account. But even before that, we wanted to be able to basically have the same behavior on each one. So we came up with this idea of and this is quite a neat little thing and quite useful, a thing called sk. It could be called anything you like, but it's a slider that goes between 0 and, in this case, 1 actually. Let's make that neat. And what it allows you to do is to take the scale value of something and just scale it. So then make a new comp, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's make a new solid and call it 100 by 100. Now if we add a control layer in there and slider control on that, so here we've got our scale thing, and that's scaling up, scaling down, scaling whatever. But let's say we wanted to be able to scale these arbitrarily, like we've done with the comp that we were just working on, and have them each scale in by the same amount. So let's say we wanted to put a keyframe there, and then 15 keyframes later, have it scale to just a little bit bigger than it needs to end up, and then say 4 keyframes on, scale to that. What you can do, and it's actually really quite simple, is you just take whatever the scale value is and multiply it by that. So now, plonk, it looks pretty horrible, but you get the idea. And you could then apply this behaviour to any of the any layers, and you can just apply the same keyframes. So that's kind of nifty. So that's what we've done in this one. Each one has a sk layer, sk effect rather, and then we've just applied the same keyframes to each one. And it doesn't matter what scale they're all at, because they're all going to be at different scales. You can just apply the same keyframes and it will pick it up. So all we've done with that is multiplied this by that sk effect. Plonk, like that. So actually this then scales in. You just see that happening there on that one. And the advantage of that is that you can have them scaling by the same amount at the same speed, and there's no problem. That is instantly why in this expression, in the position expression rather, which I had before, I used value at time, because if we don't use value at time, then it will take the actual scale value at every single frame, which actually is going to be changing. You can see down here it's getting bigger. So what that effectively results in is all the layers moving around as they scale up, which we don't want. And we've just taken the out point because we didn't actually have a scale set at the out point, but you could set it at any particular point you wanted. So let's just grab this scale thing, and as a final thing, copy it to all those layers, and then some of them are going to be coming in the wrong way because we reordered them, but we can see them all scaling in, and that's that.